Assalamu alaikum. Welcome, and thank you for joining us on this journey. What you're about to watch is not just another documentary. It's not driven by politics. It's not emotional reaction. This is a reflection rooted in the Qur'an, a clear-eyed look at what's happening today, not through news cycles, but through divine law. For over 75 years, Israel has acted with impunity, but as the Qur'an teaches us, no nation built on injustice, arrogance and corruption can survive, and the signs, they are not coming, they are already here. Let us take you through the fall of a nation, not as predicted by analysts, but as revealed by Allah. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. This is death of a nation, divine law, and the fall of Israel. The rise and fall of nations is not a random event. It is not simply a matter of military strength, economic power, or political alliances. Behind the world we see there are powerful laws put in place by Allah, the Almighty. These are the divine laws of history, and they apply to every nation, past and present. They are as real as the law of gravity. When a nation follows the path of justice, truth, and humility, it is given time and strength to grow. But when it chooses arrogance, oppression, and corruption, it begins a journey toward its own destruction. This is a promise from Allah that never fails, a system that cannot be broken by human hands. The Holy Quran gives us the key to understanding this process. It teaches us that Allah does not punish a people unfairly or without cause. Instead, people bring about their own downfall through their actions. The Quran states clearly, indeed, Allah does not wrong the people at all, but it is the people who wrong themselves. That's from Surah Yunus, chapter 10, verse 44. This verse explains that the suffering a nation faces is a direct result of its own choices. It is a mirror reflecting the injustice and corruption that have taken root within its society. When we see a nation begin to crumble, we are not witnessing an accident of history. We are watching a divine law in motion. This destruction does not always happen suddenly. It can be a slow and steady process, often invisible to those who are living through it. Allah describes this in the Quran. We will gradually lead them to destruction from where they do not know. That's Surah Al-Anfal, chapter 7, verse 182. A nation can appear strong on the outside with a powerful army and great wealth, but internally it is rotting away. Its leaders become blind with pride, and its people forget the principles of fairness and mercy. They believe their power will last forever, but they are only being led step by step toward their appointed end, a destination they cannot escape. Therefore, to truly understand why a nation collapses, we must look beyond newspaper headlines and political analysis. We must look to the spiritual state of that nation. Has it become a force for good in the world or a source of oppression? Does it stand for justice, or does it trample upon the rights of the weak? These are the questions that determine the fate of civilizations. The answers reveal whether a nation is building a foundation on solid rock or on crumbling sand. The laws of Allah are always at work, and they are the final judge of every nation's story. The story of modern-day Israel is a clear example of how these divine laws operate. Its journey did not begin with a foundation of justice, but with a claim that went against divine guidance. In 1897, the Zionist movement declared a special right to a land that belonged to others, planting the first seeds of conflict. This was followed in 1917 by the Balfour Declaration, where a foreign power promised a land it did not own to people who did not live there. These early actions set a dangerous precedent. They were built on a sense of superiority and a disregard for the native Palestinian population who had lived on that land for centuries. This was the first major violation of the divine law of justice. The injustice grew far worse over time. The year 1948, known to Palestinians as the Nakba, or the catastrophe, saw the violent expulsion of hundreds of thousands of people from their homes and villages. This act of ethnic cleansing was not a random event of war. It was a planned effort to create a state for one group of people by dispossessing another. With each passing year, the arrogance increased. The victory in the 1967 war led to the occupation of more Palestinian land, including Jerusalem, the West Bank, and Gaza. This expansion was seen as a sign of strength, but in the eyes of divine law, it was another step toward moral decay and eventual ruin. The decades that followed were marked by relentless oppression. From the massacres in Lebanon in 1982 to the repeated bombings of Gaza, a clear pattern emerged. Israel built a system of control that many, including its own human rights groups, have called apartheid. It controlled the movement of Palestinians, their access to water, and their ability to build homes. This system was designed to crush the will of the people and ensure permanent dominance. But in the Qur'an, Allah warns against such pride. The powerful who oppress the weak are only setting the stage for their own downfall, as they believe their power makes them immune to consequences. This long history of injustice cannot be ignored because it is the root cause of the events we see today. Each act of oppression, each stolen home, and each life taken without right was a violation of the sacred balance. A state that is built upon the suffering of another people cannot find lasting peace or security. It may build high walls and develop powerful weapons, but it cannot protect itself from the spiritual laws that govern the universe. The foundation was laid on injustice, and a structure built on a weak foundation is destined to collapse no matter how strong it appears. What is happening in Gaza today is the tragic but predictable result of a century of injustice. It is the bitter harvest of seeds planted long ago. The world is now watching a humanitarian crisis unfold in real time, one that shocks the conscience of any person who values human life. Since October 2023, tens of thousands of Palestinians, a horrifying number of them women and children, have been killed. Entire families have been wiped from existence. This is not a war between two equal armies. It is the destruction of a captive population. It is a clear sign that the divine law of consequence is at work, exposing the true nature of the oppressor for all to see. The cruelty has extended to the most sacred of places, hospitals and shelters. We have seen Israeli forces systematically target medical facilities, places that are protected under every international law. Al-Amal Hospital in Khan Yunis and others across Gaza have been bombed, besieged, and turned into combat zones. They have attacked the tents of displaced people seeking refuge and even opened fire on starving civilians as they desperately waited for aid. As of June 2025, a pattern has emerged of killing aid seekers near distribution points. These actions are not mistakes. They are a sign of a deep moral sickness, an arrogance so profound that it sees no soul as sacred. Furthermore, the state of Israel has used hunger as a weapon of war. It imposed a near-total blockade on Gaza, cutting off food, water, and medicine for over 2 million people. When a small amount of aid was finally allowed in, it was often controlled and distributed in a way that humiliated and endangered the people it was meant to help. The United Nations itself has rejected this system, stating that it allows Israel to use humanitarian aid as a tool of control. When a nation intentionally starves children and attacks those who come to feed them, it has crossed a line from which there is no return. It has declared war not on an army, but on humanity itself. This unimaginable suffering is a sign for those who reflect. It reveals that the state of Israel has lost its moral compass completely. Its actions are no longer those of a nation seeking security, but of a power consumed by rage and a desire for vengeance. It is acting with a level of brutality that cannot be sustained. In the divine order, such extreme oppression serves a purpose. It awakens the world and seals the fate of the oppressor. The horror in Gaza is not just a political issue, it is a spiritual event, a final damning testimony against a state that has chosen the path of tyranny. In the face of this immense tragedy, many have looked toward the leaders of Muslim nations and asked, where are they? The silence and inaction from many of these leaders have been deeply disappointing. This weakness comes from many sources. Some are too dependent on Western powers to speak out forcefully. Others are more concerned with protecting their own positions of power than with defending the oppressed. There is a lack of unity and a fear of political or economic consequences. This silence is a sign of a spiritual illness within the Muslim world itself, a departure from the Quranic command to stand for justice, no matter the cost. However, we must not fall into despair because of the weakness of human leaders. Their plans, their fears, and their silence are all part of a much larger picture. The Quran reminds us of a powerful truth, and they plan, but Allah plans. And Allah is the best of planners. That's Surah Al-Anfal, verse 54. While men make their calculations based on power and politics, Allah's plan unfolds on a higher level. The failure of human leaders to act only serves to make one thing clearer: the eventual outcome will not be the result of their efforts. True victory and justice come from Allah alone, not from presidents or kings. Israel, too, puts its faith in its own plans. It relies on its advanced military, its powerful international allies, and its nuclear threats, known as the Samson option. It believes these things make it invincible, but this is the ultimate illusion of power. The Quran teaches us that human might is nothing when confronted with divine will. On the battlefield, it is not the soldier who decides the outcome. As Allah tells the believers, you did not kill them, but Allah killed them. That's from Surah Al-Anfal, verse 17. This shows that all power truly belongs to Allah, and He gives it to whom He wills and takes it from whom He wills. Therefore, the inaction of some and the arrogance of others are both part of the divine unfolding of events. The silence of allies does not stop Allah's plan, and the might of an oppressor cannot defeat it. We are witnessing a moment where human power is being shown to be utterly helpless. The final result is not in the hands of the United States, nor in the hands of regional powers, nor in the hands of the Israeli army. The fate of the Holy Land is being decided by its Creator. Our role is to have certainty, yaqeen, in His promise and watch as His justice prevails. The final chapter of this story has not yet been written by men, but it has already been decreed by Allah. The collapse of an oppressive state is not a matter of if, but when. This end will not come as a military victory for any human group or nation. Instead, it will be a collapse from within, a divine judgment that fulfills the laws of history described in the Quran. A state that has alienated the world, lost its moral authority, and is consumed by its own hatred cannot survive. Its internal divisions will widen, its society will fracture, and its sense of purpose will be lost. It will become an empty shell, powerful on the outside but hollow within. The Quran promises that truth is permanent and falsehood is temporary, and say, truth has come and falsehood has departed. Indeed, is falsehood by nature ever bound to depart? That's Surah Al-Isra, verse 81. The state of Israel was built on a false premise, that one group of people could claim a divine right to dispossess and oppress another. For a time, this falsehood appeared strong, protected by earthly powers, but falsehood by its very nature is weak and temporary. The truth that justice must be for all is now returning, and the falsehood is beginning to crumble under the weight of its own lies and crimes. The events we see are a lesson for all of humanity. They teach us that true security does not come from walls, armies, or alliances. It comes from justice, mercy, and living in accordance with divine law. Any nation, Muslim or non-Muslim, that strays from this path will ultimately face the same fate. The laws of Allah are universal and impartial. They reward the just and humble, and they bring down the arrogant and the corrupt. The fall of an oppressive regime is not an act of revenge, but an act of restoration, a return to the natural balance of the world as intended by its Creator. Therefore, the ultimate victory belongs to Allah. It is His will that is being done. The suffering of the Palestinian people has been immense, but it has not been in vain. Through their pain and perseverance, they have exposed a great injustice to the world and have become the instruments of a divine reckoning. The final outcome is certain. The Holy Land will one day be cleansed of tyranny. It will return to being a land of peace and justice for all its people, as it was meant to be. This is not a human prediction, it is a divine promise, and Allah never fails in His promise. Ya Allah, the one who never sleeps, the one whose plan is always perfect, the one who brings down empires and raises the oppressed. We do not wait for signs, we see them. We do not doubt your promise, we live by it. You have taught us through Qur'an and history, no falsehood survives, no injustice escapes, no oppressor rules forever. You are already judging, already unfolding your decree. The collapse has begun, not by our hands, but by your wisdom, not by weapons, but by your law. Ya Allah, grant us eyes to see, hearts to understand, and tongues that speak the truth. Let us stand as witnesses to your justice, not claimers of your victory. Let the arrogant fall as they always have. Let the earth be purified as it always is, and let the truth be victorious as it always will be, by your will alone. We do not fear the oppressors. We do not rely on nations. We do not despair. We know you are at work. We know collapse is coming. We know the promise is true, and sufficient is your Lord as a guide and a helper. Surah Al-Furqan, verse 31, Ameen, Ya Rab al-Alamin. What you've just watched isn't theory. It's not just commentary. It's Allah's justice, alive in history, visible in today's headlines, and recorded in the Qur'an. Share this video with those who feel hopeless. Like it if you believe the Qur'an holds the answers we've ignored. Subscribe to witness more truths through the lens of revelation, not rhetoric. Truth is not silent, truth is not late, truth is inevitable. Waqul ja l'haqwu wa zahaka al-batilu inwa al-batila kana zahukan, and say the truth has come and falsehood has vanished. Surely falsehood is ever bound to vanish. Surah Al-Isra 17:81.